City of Lowell for our regular meeting on Monday, December 12th, 2022 to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sue, roll call, please.
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Here.
Commissioner Chambers.
Here.
Commissioner Ellis.
Here.
Commissioner Plank.
Here.
Commissioner Schraven. Here. Commissioner Gadula is absent, and Chair Barker.
Here.
I'll make a motion to excuse Mike.
I'll second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mike stands excused. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Sue?
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yeah.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Yes.
Commissioner Plank.
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven.
Yes.
And Chair Barker.
Yes. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, November 14th, 2022?
Make a motion for approval.
And a second?
I'll support.
Any discussion? Sue?
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yeah.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Yes.
Commissioner Plank.
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven.
Yes.
And Chair Barker.
Yes. I'd like to welcome everybody here. We have public here. Any comments other than the agenda?
Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Old business, master plan review.
We don't have anything new to discuss along these lines unless there are specific discussion items from the planning commission. This is just left on here as something that we'll be working on. I owe the city a proposal letter that kind of breaks down what that process is going to look like, with a work scope, what kind of public engagement options you want to look at. Because it's been, 15 years, I think, since your previous plan was adopted, we'll be, doing a pretty wholesale rewrite. I expect that some of the principles from the previous plan will be carried forward, but there'll certainly be kind of a fairly, large-scale refresh and reboot. So there's no action here needed tonight on behalf of the Planning Commission. If there are questions, of course, happy to answer them. We talked a little bit at the last, I think it was a joint meeting last month with the City Council about this project in particular. Probably wouldn't start it until mid next year, but otherwise this is just kind of here to keep it on my radar and yours, and that'll be something we'll be working on in the coming months.
And we do, Mike, we do have the approval really from the city council too, correct?
It still would have to go back to them, but I believe they're on board with it.
Everybody seemed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions at all? Andy? If not, new business. Approval of the 2023 meeting dates, which are listed in our packets. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve these. I can support.
Okay, any discussion? Sue, voice vote, please.
Commissioner Cadwalder.
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers.
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Yes.
Commissioner Plank.
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven.
Yes.
And Chair Barker.
Yes. Next one is the amendment to city zoning ordinance chapter 14 F1, the floodplain overlay district, and 14A, the River's Edge district. This is a public meeting, so I will open it to the public at this point and turn it over to Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We discussed this at the previous meeting, so this is kind of a cleanup amendment that was recommended to us by Eagle. The City Council has adopted a police power ordinance along these same lines that allows the City of Lowell to continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And what that is so if you live in a floodplain and you need to buy flood insurance, which you typically do, the community in which you reside has to be a participant of the National Flood Insurance Program for you to be able to buy it. So the federal government sets the rates and everything, and then you can buy it through a local insurance carrier. So in order for the city to remain a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program, we need to adopt these amendments. And so just to kind of briefly walk through them here, most of them are pretty straightforward. So in section 14.02, subparagraph A, we're basically just deleting the references to the old maps and adding in the references to the new maps. In section 14.04, there's just some clarification here in terms of what is permitted in the district. In subparagraph B1, there was a bunch of language about the building being constructed in such a way that they're watertight and all of that. Eagle has suggested we take that out, and the reason is that that's covered separately under the building code, so we don't need to have something in zoning that attempts to supersede or might conflict in any way with what's in the building code. So that has been removed, and it'll simplify things, I think, from the Planning Commission's perspective. We still have the standard here that all new structures have to have a minimum or the lowest habitable floor has to be at least 1 foot above base flood elevation. So base flood elevation, I think if you have a 100-year flood, which is what you had more or less in 2013, it might have been a little bit higher than that. So, but the lowest habitable floor of any new structure in a floodplain has to be a foot above that. So when we see applications for site plan review or for properties coming in that are within the floodplain, they need to be elevated somehow. In some cases, they'll try to build up the foundation, in which case they might have to take a cut someplace else, and there's a permitting process for that. But this kind of simplifies that process and that standard a little bit. The other changes in here are just sort of changing the name. So the old ordinance reference to DNR, this updates it to the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE. And that's pretty much it. 14.07 includes that same reference about the lowest floor, at least 1 foot above base flood elevation. In subsection J, that's the reference to the building code that I mentioned. In 14.07J, the event that the standards of this chapter conflict with Appendix G of the Michigan Building Code as amended, Appendix G shall control. Everything else I think is pretty much just kind of clean up stuff. In the River's Edge District, which is section 2 of the amendment, there's nothing changing except for that reference to Eagle on subsection 14A05, subparagraph A1. So this is primarily just kind of a cleanup, housekeeping sort of thing we had to do for the city to maintain its participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, which is obviously something that helps a lot of people because the floodplain occupies a lot of the city. And I think we talked about this last time, but there's virtually no change in the actual boundary of the floodplain. So between the 1983 map and the 2023 map, as far as I can tell, the floodplain boundaries are virtually identical. So I'm not going to see any major differences in terms of which properties are in or out. That's going to be pretty much the same. And so we're pretty much just kind of getting this brought up into the 21st century. And, you know, again, this is something that will help city residents in the future if there is a flood and someone has a loss and they have to go through this process. The flood insurance is tremendously helpful.
Commissioners, any questions at the end at all? General public? In that case, I will close the public meeting, and I'm assuming we pass this on to the city council, correct?
An amendment to the zoning ordinance, you'd be making a recommendation for approval to the city council.
And do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Sue, voice vote, please.
Commissioner Cadwalder?
Yes.
Commissioner Chambers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis?
Yes.
Commissioner Plank?
Yes.
Commissioner Schraven?
Yes.
And Chair Barker?
Yes, thank you. Staff report, Sue, anything?
Nothing further.
Mike, anything? Andy?
Only thing I'll add is the state's legislative session concluded last Wednesday. There was no action on the short-term rental bill that we thought might preempt your authority that went nowhere. There was similarly another bill related to gravel mining, which could have done the same thing that obviously was not passed either. So good news as far as we're concerned. I'd expect it'll get reintroduced.
I
early
have
next
a feeling that they
session.
will not move on those bills, being moves now.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, it don't strike me as being particularly partisan, but I mean, I'm really curious as far as what we're going to expect with such a change up in the makeup of the legislature. So,
Would it matter for the mining, because is that the only mining operation that we have possible?
that is the only one you have. It's not the only one possible, and no, I don't think it would affect that at this point in time.
Because it's already done.
Because it's already done. But it was, I mean, it would have been a significant, negatively in my opinion, but it would have been a significant change to how those are handled. When it affected what you have, but if there was a new one that came in somewhere else, it would have almost completely circumvented your role completely. So I was happy to see that didn't pass. Short-term rental one, I was happy to see that didn't pass indifferently. So we're hoping that it stays that way, but I mean, the short-term rental thing has been going on for 4, 5, 6 years now. So, I mean, they might bring it back early next year, but I have not heard anything that would suggest that it's going to get moved out particularly quickly, but we'll see. Other than that, nothing else to report. We will have the site plan to look at after January meeting.
Staff, or commissioners, Dave?
I'm good.
Alan?
No.
Marty?
No.
Tony?
Wish you all Merry Christmas. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm good as well.
And a Happy New Year to all. With that, I would take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion for that.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.